Hey, sisters. Welcome back to another episode of the Sisters-in-Law podcast featuring intimate discussions with Black women about their trials, triumphs, and tribulations in the legal field. In this episode, I had such a generative discussion with Olamide Michelle on wellness and ritual. Olamide Michelle is a brand strategist, lawyer, and creative founder based in Atlanta. She runs OMI Legal, a boutique law firm that helps entrepreneurs protect their ideas through trademarks and contracts, and leads Ritual House, a studio and community that blends branding, wellness, and storytelling. With a background in law, the arts, and business, Olamide is passionate about helping creative people build aligned, legally sound brands that feel as good as they look. She is also the host of Ritual, the podcast, dedicated to ambitious, creative women seeking a harmonious blend of productivity and purpose. I came across her podcast and immediately recognized that she would make an incredible guest on this podcast. In a profession built on precision, power, and long hours, how do Black women in law find space to breathe, to heal, and to be whole? Olamide and I get into this and more, so check it out. Here we go. Hi, Olamide. How are you?
Hey, how are you? I'm so great. I'm so excited to do this. It's been a while and I'm happy to be back on a podcast.
Yes, well, welcome to the Sisters-in-Law podcast. I'm so excited that you're agreeing to join us today and talk about some rituals and wellness and being a lawyer.
Absolutely. I think this is such a great kind of like subject matter. And I like that you're combining it with law because we tend to keep them completely separate. And honestly, we need to stop doing that.
Exactly, yeah. Why not be multidisciplinarian?
Right, right.
Yeah, so I like to start the podcast off with the signature question, which is, where are you and your people from?
Okay, my people, I like this. Well, my name is Olamide Michelle. Funny story, which a lot of people know and many new people do not know, is that I used to go by Michelle because it was easier, right? I think my mom, being a Nigerian immigrant, actually, both of my parents are from Nigeria, and they would take me to school and they'd be like, Olamide, Olamida, Ola this, Ola that. And I was like, that's not my name. And my mom was like, you know what? I like her middle name just as much, so just call her Michelle. It's something you've heard before, and with that, I kinda just started going by that, but then as I got older, I realized, you know what? I wanna own my origin and own the beauty and power of my name, and I think the more people start going by their actual ethnic or, foreign or international identities, we actually enable people to be more aware, more comfortable, and more people will start knowing how to say your name. So that is my long way of saying I'm Nigerian.
I
and
love
I'm
that.
and I'm from Atlanta. Spent a few years back and forth traveling DC, New York, but now I am back in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow, I love that. The Atlanta sisters unite.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And I love that you shared about your name because names mean a lot and have so much weight in culture. But I want you to kind of get into how you were inspired to go into the legal profession and how has your identity as a Black woman kind of shaped that path?
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I get conflicted with this question because I'm like, did I always want to be a lawyer or did they always tell me I should be a lawyer? And anyone who is in law, especially if you're a woman, for some reason, if you are talkative, inquisitive, or even someone who is questioning authority, they go, ah, you should be a lawyer. So they tell you that so much that it can kind of become this like self-fulfilling prophecy. Or I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I'm not completely sure if I'm looking back at childhood, but I know that I started in a completely different space. I thought I was going to be a performer. Like I was a trained dancer, dance instructor, artist of a lot of different disciplines. I played instruments. I was in orchestra, was in musical theater. So I wanted to be like star, right? Like I thought I was going to be on television and doing all of that. And again, going back to that origin story, in African homes and a lot of other, immigrant families, they're like, that's cute, but no, you're not. So I started exploring, okay, more reliable career paths, more responsible choices, but still being able to have fun. and, explore your creative side. So as I did that, I was like, okay, I like fashion, I like art. So I went into PR, explored broadcasting for a little bit, and just allowed
Oh,
my education and exploration of different career paths to kind of just guide me. And as I would take the classes and do the internships, I would learn a little bit more. And then once it was time to graduate, I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I'm ready to go straight into law school, if I even still want to be a lawyer. So I took a year off. I
I
think
love that.
yeah, like a lot of people who go into law, I think they kind of forget that you can actually have any major. So I
Mhm.
knew that studying whatever I wanted to study wouldn't hinder me from going into law. But if for some reason my job at a magazine took off and I could be some kind of editor one day, then I wouldn't have to go to law school, right? So I did that knowing that I was going to explore some options, worked in
Mhm.
sales for a little bit, and then I went to law school. And funny enough, in my personal statement, I just told them straight up that I'm going to law school because I want the highest degree to build a business. I don't actually know that I want to
Wow.
be a lawyer, and it worked. They let
It's a
me in.
full circle moment. It's kind of funny and ironic because even though I don't have immigrant parents, they still have that mindset of you do this job, you do this degree, and you have this particular life. And most lawyers have that story of following the checklist of what they are supposed to do and want to do. And it's kind of ironic how we all have like similar backgrounds in that
Yeah.
sense.
It's like lawyer, engineer, doctor. I think
Mhm.
universally, no matter if your parents are like white American, Asian, black, whatever, I
Exactly.
think they're just nice, safe choices. And then they're also
Right.
prestigious. I think deep down, your parents just really want to be excited and proud that you've accomplished something impressive. So they push you in those directions.
Yeah, it's a cheat code in their
Yeah.
mind at
Yeah,
least.
exactly. A little bit harder than they realize. They're like,
Right.
big deal. Just become a surgeon. No big deal.
Exactly. Yeah, so kind of going off of that, what was your experience navigating maybe being the only in a room, whether that was in law school or just in life in general, based on the path that you've taken thus far?
Yeah, I love that question. I think I've actually definitely been the only in all the rooms and all the professions, all the schools, right? So I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood in like the suburbs of Georgia near Kennesaw. So it was already pretty normal that there were just like a few black kids, and you kind of just get used to being maybe like 2 to 10% of the school. And sure, there would be like some awkward moments, some moments of bullying or just feeling othered. But,
Mm.
in no defense of that, I think that was happening regardless of what race you were. I think
Right.
that's unfortunately just
Kids
the
being
reality.
kids,
Exactly.
sadly.
Especially millennial kids. I feel like we were probably
Mhm.
the meanest group, but, that kind of gave me some tough skin. And then as much as that can be harmful and detrimental to your, evolution of as a young adult, I think what it actually did for me was make me super adaptable and understand how to kinda, like, roll with any type of personality. And then I think when you add that to coming from a Nigerian home where the sarcasm is abrasive, like the way you kind of communicate culturally is
Mhm.
so different than when I'm with my black friends and then when I
Right.
was with my white classmates or friends. So I was like slowly learning a lot of different personality types, cultures, political backgrounds, and just kind of logging that information
Mhm.
for if and when it would come up again for me. So I think it can be challenging. And I did face some challenges, especially when you throw in maybe like some socioeconomic differences and you're with
Mhm.
not only all one race, but now all one race from a very elite financial background. And you
Mhm.
just feel really like out of place. But I use that to kind of push me. I don't know that I was always perfect at navigating those situations, but I will say it did challenge me and inspire me to make sure that I didn't fall into that habit of almost isolating myself or segregating myself on purpose and only talking to the other only, right? Because that can actually perpetuate the problem in and of itself.
Yeah, that's really incredible. It sounds like you're very culturally fluent and fluid.
Yeah, I
So
guess I didn't know what code switching was, but I definitely
right.
was doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what was kind of your ideal area of the law? Like, what kind of was the area that you were most drawn to going into the legal profession? And we know that the field can be all consuming. So, what has been your biggest challenge maintaining a sense of self outside of your professional identity?
Yeah. I think, so for those who don't know, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs now that I've started my own firm. So I'm big
Mm,
on sense of self and personal brand identity and all of that jazz. So I think for me, I'm unique in the sense that my profession is my personal
mm,
identity, like, and not in the negative way that people might think that you're making your job your existence. I actually did it the other way around. It's like I decided who I was and then only wanted to be in professions that aligned kind of precisely with that. So
right.
every legal career I've had has actually been pretty creative. And when it hasn't, I haven't really thrived. I haven't enjoyed it. So even if it meant I wasn't going to be super wealthy or big hotshot am law attorney, I've always kind of gravitated towards, oh, okay, I'm going to work for a nonprofit and support actors and artists and, things of that nature. So I knew that, okay, if I was doing PR, fashion, editorial work, and
Mm,
then I took some IP courses, oh, I started to see that there actually is a connection. You can be a lawyer and still be creative or be an advocate for creative. So I've tried to stay as much as I can in that pocket while navigating how to make money, I think is actually the
mhm,
real issue. It
right.
hasn't been an identity crisis. It's more of how do you do that and not go broke? So
Mhm. That's
that's
the
more
real
of
key to the
that's the more
kingdom,
struggle. Yeah, yeah.
the money.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you kind of alluded to this, but what boundaries have you learned to set, and how do you take time to honor them in developing your professional career, but also developing your personal identity, your brand, your personality, even?
Yeah, I think pushing the boundaries a bit is actually a boundary, if that makes sense. Like giving myself permission to say, like right now my hair is straight and I'm very, I guess you could say, palatable. But I started going into work with like, highlights and kinky hair and extensions and braids and really just realizing like, oh, I can truly be myself. And if one day I want to look corporate and behave a little bit more traditionally, that's 100% okay. It doesn't mean I'm selling out as a Black woman, a Black attorney. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to blend in. And then tomorrow I can pop up in here in the office with a full extended afro with,
Mhm.
way extra hair inside, right? So, right. And I'm going to just like do it and be comfortable and confident. And I
Yeah.
think at first, in the beginning, I'd say nearly 10 years ago, I was way more self conscious of that and trying to like
Mhm.
fit the TV, Claire Huxtable. I'm a posh professional attorney
Mhm.
doing very serious and important work. And, here's the glamour behind it. And there's still a ton of people who present that way. I know, I'm sure you know some lawyers like that, that it's like they
Of
present
course.
with that glam and that elevated appeal. And it's very unrelatable. So my boundary is actually allowing myself to be kind of more of a normal person instead of letting this
Mm.
like legal world turn me into some, like, I don't know, commercial stereotype.
Yeah, and it's kind of pushing the boundaries in a sense of and challenging what it means to be a lawyer, what it means to look like a lawyer.
Exactly. Yes.
Because you have the Tracy Ellis Ross,
Yeah.
what was her character's name again?
Joan.
Joan, you have
He was
Joan.
actually I feel like that's, like, my best friend in my head.
Yeah, then you have Maxine Shaw, then you
Yeah.
have somebody like Olivia Pope on
Exactly,
Scandal. So it
exactly.
it could be a range of different personalities. So I love that. But let's get into the real heart of this episode, which
Okay.
I found your podcast actually when I was looking up wellness rituals for lawyers
Okay.
specifically, and I love to see that there is a Black woman that was highlighting this. So can you tell the audience about the Ritual podcast and how you came about developing it, and what opportunities have you seen come from it as well?
Well, first of all, I'm so excited that you found it because I like to keep it real. I definitely fell off, and this conversation and you reaching out to me got me inspired to revisit that and really take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah,
But
I'm
I think
happy to
in
do
and of
so.
itself, yeah, like that whole experience of leaving something and going back kind of ironically touches on the concept of ritual. So for me, I had started a podcast a few years before this titled The Boho Business Guide and had really branded myself as this bohemian, holistic yoga girly who also was this entrepreneur loving woman. So I had a
Mhm.
very clear path of like talking about all things business, branding, law, as well as wellness. But I didn't really tap into that concept of ritual until later
Mhm.
because I loved having structure, even though I am a free spirit. I love having a little bit of like regularity and repetition and themes of my day, even though I can be a complete ADHD hot mess. So I realized that these things can coexist. You can be a corporate success story, but you need to do that meditation every morning or go on that walk and have this thing that regulates your nervous system. So for me, although I had appreciated these things and I had done a good job of like being in the wellness space, I taught like fitness classes on the side. Once you start losing kind of like that habit, that good hobby, that thing that you're doing regularly, those routines, you start to see your profession decline. You start to see your relationships decline. You start feeling more stressed, more lost. I think it can affect your confidence and like your identity. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to be rushed to the hospital again or have like some kind of like near death experience for me to kind of wake up, get
Right.
inspired and almost, snap out of it to be really blunt.
For
So I
sure.
said, I'm going to use these few episodes, whether I pick up on it and I do 20, 30, 40, 50 episodes, or if I just do these like five, I'm going to start somewhere and tell my story of how rituals quite literally save me from my own anxiety or my own like shortcomings and hopefully inspire people like yourself to think, okay, this is already a very demanding path, whether you're an
Mhm.
entrepreneurial lawyer or you're working for a firm. Are you taking care of some basic fundamental things? And if you are, maybe try to ritualize it, right? Glamorize the mundane so that way you won't kind of take it for granted. Like taking those routines and what you eat for breakfast is just like an oversight. Maybe if you can make it feel like this beautiful experience, you'd be more likely to keep up with it. So that's the journey of how I got to Ritual the podcast. And really the heart of it is that I bet you there are other men and women out there who are ambitious, creative leaders, but they're constantly struggling with having good habits, structure, whether it is something that is diagnosed as ADHD or something else. And they're just like, someone help me. Like, someone talk to me about things I can do to build a better life for myself so I can succeed.
Yeah, that's incredible that you've carved that space too in that lane for people to access and tap into because we're all human beings at the end of the day and life is short. So you have to really make the most of it and develop some balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely a struggle, it's a journey, but the more you kinda give your grace along the way, I think that's really all that matters.
Yeah. And I think since the pandemic, wellness has had this kind of resurgence in a way, especially in cities and now with remote work, with people working from home and wanting to create some kind of distinction in their lives.
Yeah.
People speak of creating rituals to ground themselves, but what daily or weekly practices help you return to center? And are there any cultural or ancestral practices that also play a role in your wellness routine?
Well, I have so much to say about that. My dad came
Yeah.
to my new place and was like, "I feel like you're an African witch doctor, and I don't know where you got this from." And he like makes fun of all of my little things around the house. So, I'm raised Christian, very like
Right.
religious home. So they're like, all right, chill out with the witchcraft.
Mhm.
So I find that to be funny. But I think going back to what you said about post-pandemic reality, I
Mm,
think people don't realize that things that were built into our day-to-day lives were actually rituals. So when you went to
mm,
work and you had to do that really boring meeting and you kind of gossiped and whispered with some of your colleagues, and then everybody went for a walk to a coffee shop just to kind of
right.
waste time in between getting back to the nitty-gritty of work, you were
Mhm.
doing a ritual. You could expect to do that every single day. So a ritual is habitual, it's expected, it's routine, but it's also doing something for you mentally, physically, emotionally. So you were getting a little bit of an escape, you had a little laugh, you were interacting with another human being. But when you go home, yeah, you could be productive. Your house or apartment could be super clean and tidy. You might even have the best Notion board and all of that, but you're just sitting alone and actually going a bit crazy, so you may not sense it until it's too late, and you have to build in almost like a simulation. So for a lot of us work from home people, rituals might look like going somewhere else or going to your rooftop, seeing other humans, picking Tuesdays and Thursdays to work from a cafe, or maybe your partner can stay home with you and also work from home and you do breakfast together on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That can keep your spirit elevated and just make work feel less depressing, really. And I
Mhm.
think that's what
Right.
I try to do. I'm not always perfect, but I definitely notice a difference when I can just rely on human interaction as part of my regular day to day because I am actually quite naturally introvert. So I think if I don't force it, I'll just, sit alone forever, you know?
Yeah, that's important to highlight for sure. And I guess we've been throwing out these buzzwords like ritual and
Yeah.
wellness. And particularly for wellness, it's such a catchphrase that it's being used so often that it loses its own meaning.
Right.
But how do you define wellness for yourself beyond what's marketed as self-care and these kind of more woo-woo concepts? How do you define it for you?
For me, I think I have a pretty boring and basic definition. I think wellness is really just the art and the experience of being well. So, mentally, you are well. You are aware of what your shortcomings are, what your gifts are, what your talents are. You're fully aware of who you are and you're okay with it. And not only are you okay, you're like thriving, evolving, and growing. Physically, you are well. So, you could be that person that wakes up and does the marathon training and kind
Mhm.
of freak out your friends with how much you bike ride and you're super intense about that. Or you're the person that does a cute little podcast stroll with your dog every morning and you
Yeah.
call your bestie and talk on the phone, but you have some basic physical wellness. And
Mhm.
then last, it's like, you've got mental, physical. Then how are you just doing in life with your relationships, with work? If you feel like content with who you are, knowing that good and bad things are going to happen, then you are well. It's not just, oh, I go to the spa and I got a massage. Like those are cute, like luxurious activities, but they aren't actually wellness because I think wellness is continuous. It's
Mhm.
like a constant state and self-care is like an activity, you know?
That distinction is helpful because I think people have it in their mind. They see on social media or like ads. It's become kind of a marketing thing, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And
yeah.
I see it a lot with trademarks, ironically, because everybody's
Interesting.
registering a wellness or ritual like mark because it is
Right.
the biggest thing right now. And I think post pandemic actually pushed a lot of people from a more
Mhm.
sincere and authentic space to realize that they were not well. And
Mhm.
that realization was masked by like, the way our culture and society was functioning. And now it's like people have to look in the mirror and be like, wow, I'm not doing so well. And maybe that will inspire other people. So they create products, they create apps, they create tools or services. And I think that's also contributing to the influx of wellness this, wellness that all over,
Mhm.
our screens and pages. So
Yeah, that's a helpful tidbit to know too, from a lawyer's perspective, especially.
yeah. It's like if you have a creative mark and you want to register it in that space, you better hurry because everybody else is doing it already.
Right. Yeah, that's good to know. And speaking of that, how do you incorporate rest, joy, or spirituality into your life despite demanding schedules? And what advice do you have for other practitioners trying to do the same?
I think allowing yourself to incorporate these traditional practices, even when you're not in the traditional space. So I'll give an example.
Mhm.
If you pray and you are a faithful person, sometimes you're going to wake up, you're going to go into your like beautiful corner, you're going to close your eyes, put your hands together, and actually like pray, do a devotional, listen to something. And other
Mhm.
times you might be praying to yourself while you're driving to work and your eyes are wide open and on the road. I think it can still coexist, even though I think,
Mm.
my grandmother or more traditional people would say you have to do things this way for it to count.
Yeah,
And I think
be in
when you
the
get
prayer
it,
closet.
yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. And then, for fitness, another good example would be like you go to work, you skipped your morning workout just because you had no choice, but you decide that you're going to take the stairs. You're going to take a 15-minute break and just go up and down the stairs, like the stairwell
Mhm.
that no one can see, no one knows that you're doing it. And then you come back to your desk and maybe you stretch a little bit later. I think allowing that flexibility is how you actually practice balance.
Yeah, yeah, that's really nice. And kind of takes away the especially and I'm thinking about lawyers because the audience is primarily law students and other practitioners and people in the legal field, and we have this set way that we think things are supposed to be, and if it doesn't fit that set way, then it's not right or it's not
Exactly.
the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
So I appreciate you saying that. And let's get into your community and collective care. How important has sisterhood or community in general been in sustaining your professional journey? What does the collective care look like in the context of Black women in law? How do you think workplaces can better support it?
Yeah, so I honestly can't speak too much to the very end because I work for myself, but
Right.
I'll kind of like answer your question in reverse order. How I
Sure.
make sure I'm supporting it as the employer to like my interns or volunteers or,
Mhm.
contract attorneys that I might be working with is I am very conscious to prioritize working with women, especially diverse women. I know it's like legally, I can't say that I only want to work with those people.
Of
It's not a
course.
discriminatory practice in that way, but I think I'm very excited when I can make an impact on someone younger than me who looks like me and who hasn't seen someone in this space. And I've gotten so many, such good feedback. Now, transparently, I've actually helped women from all demographic backgrounds, socioeconomic, racially, everything. So consistently, I think by putting them all together, it also enhances their diverse experiences and different walks of life. So I think when they see their supervisor prioritizing wellness, having a flexible workspace, but still promoting and advocating, excellence and entrepreneurship and like success, it shows like, okay, I don't have to become that lawyer that I saw on TV that was like having anxiety attacks every day. We can find like a different way to practice. So that's how I show up collectively. Outside of that, I think a lot of the initiatives I lead and some of my other businesses are always focused in either supporting or highlighting, marketing for conscious brands. So because I do a
Mm,
lot of brand consulting, I think those collaborative efforts of hosting an event where there's going to be, someone that's doing like ancient healing or someone that's going to give a sound bath or
right.
someone who promotes healthy organic products. I think that being incorporated into a corporate structure and into my business model really does help. And then I'd say when it comes to sisterhood, friendships, relationships, always reminding yourself that you cannot and should not do anything alone. No
Mhm.
matter eldest daughter syndrome, whatever you got, do not
Exactly.
do it alone because you will definitely be struggling. Like, you might do well for a while. You can sustain it for a little bit, but that burnout always comes, and that's
Mhm.
not even like a negative thing I'm trying to project on people. It just is what it is, right? And I think when you realize that, that's the starting point. Now, I'll be real, it's not always easy to find those friends. It's not always easy to sustain that quote sisterhood and then, I don't know what kind of podcast we want this to be, but we can go into the controversy of that sisterhood doesn't even always look like what you should define or consider is a sisterhood. Sometimes we get into this space where we're judging or we're
Mhm.
competitive, and that can happen across any race or age. But particularly, it can be even more disappointing when you think you're putting out a certain energy to support your fellow sister, right? And then you're not getting that back or you don't have that camaraderie. So I don't know. I think it's vital. And if you can find those people, cherish it, try to be the best version of yourself that actually shows what true support, community, wellness, sisterhood actually is. So that way you can attract those people or at least inspire people to be better and kind of just, give people grace and try to stay optimistic as you navigate that journey.
Yeah, that part is so necessary. And as a eldest daughter, I totally get what you're saying because I've had burnout several times trying to do
Yes.
things myself.
Right.
So really critical to highlight that. So moving along, how do you think the legal profession in general can evolve to prioritize mental health and well-being without compromising on excellence and professional integrity?
I think if they look at it from that lens of everything is a ritual, just like you might have that morning meeting and it's part of the structure to go over the cases for the week, to go over, upcoming projects. Maybe there's a moment there that you let everyone go do something for themselves, get some fresh air. I think even little things like the architecture of the space can impact, enhance wellness, like having a patio, having maybe a cozy room that people can go relax in or take a phone call Also, I'd say third, creating like space for less stringent micromanagement. So if you have a client that needs to, have an employee that's doing some billable hour requirements, why do they have to sit at this desk in this room for 8 hours? Maybe let them take this remotely, let them do this like in the lounge space, like whatever can kind of keep that person grounded and excited about their work without them feeling super stressed, I think is what wellness looks like in that corporate space. And for those of us working from home, working for ourselves, I think the same can be said. It just, we have a higher responsibility and almost burden to make
Right.
sure that we're not being too easy on ourselves and then also not being too hard on ourselves because there is no supervisor.
Yeah, yeah, that's an incredible insight. So, kind of looking back on your life now that you've had some years in the profession and you're doing your own business, what advice would you give to your younger self about ambition and grace and rest?
So I think people's natural instinct is to assume that I'll say, give yourself grace, don't be so hard on yourself, blah, blah, blah. But actually, for me, I think I would say, take yourself more seriously sooner.
Mm,
I
mhm,
think the easing into being a public figure, the casual energy I kind of approach, like,
mhm,
okay, I'm going to build a business, I'm going to create content online. I think I should have been a little bit more intense earlier, especially when I had that energy in the beginning. It's like you're running a race and you might think, oh, I'm going to save my energy, I'm going to pace myself and go slow and steady all the way. And sure, you're still going to get to the finish line, you're still going to do well, but everyone's, like, done. They're done with the race. So sometimes I look back and realize that, like, I could have probably started jogging or, like, even sprinting a lot sooner and
right.
stepped into that leveled up experience that maybe I'm just now entering a lot earlier. So, yeah.
I think a lot of people, probably to your point, would assume that you already did that. So it's helpful to hear that, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes you need the push
Yes.
yourself.
And what people see is not necessarily reality. You can seem
Mhm.
like you're crushing it, and I'm not taking away anything from people or from myself, right? You can be experiencing growth and success, but still know that you maybe delayed a lot of progress and clarity by not taking things as seriously or by not implementing those rituals and structure earlier. Like, would you
Mhm.
rather be organized or kind of like learn the hard lesson from being disorganized first?
Mhm.
Probably the first, right? So
Right.
that's really how I'm looking at it.
And what legacy do you hope to leave for other Black women that are entering the legal field? How do you envision a future where wellness is not a privilege, but a norm in the legal profession as well?
When we pull from that concept of indigenous or ancestral practices, how
Mhm.
these things were normal and people were not considered woo woo. You'll travel to some Latin countries and everybody's on siesta, like taking a full hour to
Right.
2 hour break. They're not considered lazy. I would like to be part of some kind of legacy, i.e., movement where
Mhm.
we normalize being that quote hippie and it's not something that's weird or silly, but actually just a normal way of life. In addition to that, I think my legacy can, more on the nose be about, oh, learning how to build a business, learning how to be ambitious. But actually, what I think I would like even more is showing people that you can be a little weird, a little quirky, a little eclectic, unconventional, and normalize that. So it's not like, oh, well, most Black women haven't done that, or, "Oh, yeah, you can pull that off." Like, I want it to be more that more people who are breaking those boundaries and
Mhm.
stereotypes are existing in high level places, and we just start to see them just as respectable as the more, streamlined individual.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I wish we had a lot more cultural practices in the US that I see abroad. Because to your
Exactly.
point, siestas would be incredible to do.
Yeah,
I vote, let's have a siesta
yeah,
implemented or a wellness week where all companies just take a break or people are able
exactly.
to take a break or a pause. Yeah.
Right, because you probably would have, like, that second, third wind of excitement and focus, but you're not even given permission to, like, relax for more than 30 minutes.
Exactly. It's like school breaks almost, how we
Mhm.
had maybe 2 or 3 different week breaks in the middle of the semester,
Right,
then we take off for the end of the year, and then we go back to it, so
exactly.
yeah, it can be done. So, what's one ritual or mindset shift that you believe every woman in a demanding field should adopt?
For me, I think the one mindset shift is works around the concept of not taking anything personally, and I'll elaborate because not only should you not take anything personally, you should start to recognize why people judge and where judgment comes from, because that will allow you to not take things personally. And I remember I did a yoga teacher training, back in 2019, and I'm in Bali living this like super exotic experience, very tropical, very grounding, very beautiful. And I felt bad for like maybe I didn't do some kind of performance test correctly and kind of thought everyone was looking at me. And my yoga instructor was like, "Why do you care?" She's like, "Oh, you think people are looking at you? Oh, you think people are judging you? That's you're perceiving them being like they're existing and their judgment of you is actually a reflection of them." And she said it way better than I'm clumsily explaining it, but it really resonated with me at that moment that like if you ever are guilty of feeling bad about being
Mhm.
perceived, that's actually you recognizing the bad things in other people. So it's like if you can just free yourself from both you perceiving yourself and perceiving others, then judgment becomes like this nothingness that you don't have to worry about.
I never even thought about that, honestly, but I have been seeing on especially TikTok, the fear of being perceived
Yep.
trend,
Yeah.
and how a lot of creators talk about how people aren't really paying attention anyway
Right.
outside of you. Like,
Yeah.
they're all in their own heads as well.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, as we kind of close out the podcast, the final signature question is, who is your sister in law? And this can be a peer, a friend, a colleague, or any mentor, any Black woman in the legal field that you admire or would like to shout out.
Oh, this one's actually interesting because I haven't been completely engulfed in law lately. So
Yeah,
I feel like all my old mentors are definitely like some of my sorority sisters from back when I was at UGA. I'm a Delta,
I love
or
that.
women that I met in like nonprofit organizations. So I'm gonna cop out a little bit and say that I don't have just one person. I'll admit that some of the most supportive people have come from like every single background. So I've actually experienced it the opposite way that because I didn't always have so many Black female mentors, I've kind of made it my mission and obsession to be that Black female mentor. And that's why I created my portfolio peer program and why I take on so many interns even when I don't need to. So yeah, I think that's something I need to be also more conscious of, like where I'm putting myself to be mentored or how I seek out mentorship. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And just so the audience can stay connected with you, where can they find you? Anything you want to shout out, your social media, any contact information that you like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And first, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation and hopefully shedding some light, inspiring people out there that have been thinking about these questions. But if you want to stay connected, as I just said, not so much in my legal space, but my law firm is OMI Legal. I still practice there and I have two interns right now. Actually, I will shout them out.
Awesome.
Taylor, she is a Black female young aspiring attorney from Stanford. And then we have EVA, who is in New York. And I'm really excited because I feel like sometimes I get interns that are like, I'm like, oh, these are some smart young women.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
incredible.
I love being inspired by like younger minds. So definitely
Mhm.
enjoying working with these two young ladies right now. So if you want to stay connected, you want to read about them, read about some of the projects we're going to be working on, that's at OMI Legal. And then my newest project, and I'd say what is taking more of my focus and passion, is Ritual House. That is the home of Ritual the podcast. And it's
Yes.
also a physical space here in Atlanta, Georgia, that is a studio and kind of content ready experience. And we're
Mhm.
taking the world of branding and legal and merging those two together so that people can either come in for in person experiences, workshops, trainings, dinner party, and really start experiencing more community. As we mentioned, we all are desperately in need of. And then also still hire my team and I for services in the space of consulting, creative execution of events, legal, and anything that kind of fits in between there.
Wow. Thank you so much, Olamide, for joining us today and for sharing your insights. I'm so excited for the audience to stay connected with you and to check out all your different projects.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I will definitely be checking more of your work out and sharing that with my community as well. So thank you once more.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to this powerful conversation with Olamide. Our discussion reminds us that wellness is not a luxury. It is a lineage, a practice, a returning to self. For Black women navigating the rigors of law and other demanding professions, ritual becomes resistance, rest becomes rebellion, and choosing softness becomes a powerful act of self-preservation. If you loved this episode, share it with a friend who might need a gentle reminder that taking a break is necessary. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Sistahs in Law. That's Sistahs in Law. Also, I will be sharing updates on content via my Substack called On the Vision Board, which will also be linked in the show notes as well as on all social media channels. I also just want to shout out all the folks on Spotify that have been leaving comments. I love the engagement from this community of listeners, so please keep it coming and encourage others to chime in as well. This is a new feature that Spotify has released and I love it. This is also a reminder to rate and review the podcast so that more people can hear these powerful conversations. And to close, may this episode encourage you to pause, to honor your breath, and to create intentional moments of ease in the midst of hard work. Whatever your ritual is, a quiet cup of tea, a morning prayer, movement, or simply saying no without guilt, know that your well-being matters. Until next time, peace and love.